Well, hello. My name is John Bonner. I'm a missionary, a pastor, and the director of Calvary Chapel Bible College in Cajamarca, Peru, in South America. I am honored that you would listen to my unique testimony, and I pray that it would be a blessing and an encouragement to you. Chapter 6. Sister Sherrie. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Ecclesiastes 3, verse 11. September 30th, 1984, Mexico City, Mexico. I picked up the ringing phone in the bodega in Mexico City and was surprised to hear Mom's voice on the other end. Unexpected calls oftentimes bring unwelcome news. Are you sitting down, John? Something terrible has happened. Your sister Sherrie has been murdered. Childhood was good. I was blessed to be the youngest of 7 and always felt love and care from my older brothers and sisters, Larry, Sue, Keith, Ann, Sherrie, and Steve. They were a generation away from me, however, having been born 11 years after Steve, the youngest of the previous 5. Most were married and already had children by the time of my earliest recollection, so my nephews became my playmates, being closer to me in age than my own siblings. I grew up hearing what a surprise I was. I always assumed this meant special. My father grew up on his parents' farm in Iowa, brought Mom out to the West Coast in the late 1930s, and began working in a service station in Venice, California. Mother got a job in the pet department at a J.J. Newberry's 5 and dime store and learned about the care and sale of small animals, fish, and pet products. When I was a baby, Mom and Dad opened Bonner's Pet Shop in Lawndale, and I eventually grew up helping customers, cleaning animal cages, and scrubbing algae buildup in the store's many fish tanks. Although they insisted I attend religious schools, my parents did not attend church themselves. But they sacrificed financially to give me the best education and to keep me from the rising drug culture. Mom and Dad rarely participated, but they made great efforts to drop me off at frequent school and church events. I sensed that my upbringing was quite different from that of my siblings. Many of my brothers and sisters smoked cigarettes, and alcohol was not uncommon to find in the house, the 2 taboos shunned by the folk at my church. I never heard swearing at home, but some of the in-laws used words this religious boy had trouble recognizing. Ours was a good, moral, and loving family, but as the baby and the religious one, I always felt a bit different. Things changed dramatically when I was 15. I witnessed Dad give his life to Jesus just prior to his cancer surgery. Thankful for a successful 11-hour operation and having a new lease on life, Dad served God with vigor and passion. Everyone he spoke to heard about Jesus. He enthusiastically read and studied his Bible and made sure Mom and I attended church with him. His overarching concern was the salvation of his children. He stressed that we all be prepared to spend eternity together as a family in heaven. I love my dad. Not everyone was receptive to Dad's conversion. Sherrie regretted our father's radically changed life and was repulsed each time he mentioned God to her. She felt he was too pushy and he unintentionally drove her away by his insistence. Without realizing it, she truly needed the very thing that she was rejecting, a full, satisfying life that could only be found in a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. My sister respected my faith, but politely asked that I not talk religion with her. During several months' break from my time in Mexico City, I visited Sherrie and her 3 teenage kids at their home in Hawthorne, California. My 2 nephews in high school at this time were especially eager to talk about the Bible and what it prophetically reveals about the last days. They had questions about the rapture, the meaning of the number 666, the Antichrist, and the Great Tribulation. They had friends who were learning about these things and wanted to know if they were true. We spent most of that evening discussing fascinating biblical prophecy. At first, Sherrie took every effort to distance herself from the lively conversation, preparing a spaghetti dinner and confining herself in the kitchen. At one point, Sherrie stood in the kitchen doorway and seemed delighted that her kids and their uncle were enjoying a good talk. Soon, Sherrie was sitting at the dining room table, listening intently, and I saw her jaw drop open in amazement as the end times events were being revealed to her. She started asking questions herself and confided, "John, I had no idea that the Bible talked about these things. This is very interesting." It was getting late and I dismissed myself to prepare for the long drive back to Vista where I was staying. As I stepped through the door, Sherrie told me how much she enjoyed my visit and asked that I come back soon to teach them more about the Bible. I offered to come back the following Friday and suggested we start a weekly Friday night Bible study in her home and that my nephews could invite their friends. Sherrie said, "Oh, John, would you really do that? Imagine, my sister was asking me to teach her the scriptures." We studied the book of Revelation together over the next several weeks. Sherrie was present at each and every Bible study, reading the Bible and praying with the group. I saw her callousness against God melt into a genuine love and appreciation for the Lord. I am convinced that God gave her this opportunity to give her life to Jesus just as Dad had done years before. God's word will not return void. He had a divine purpose for this unplanned family time. I returned to the work in Mexico shortly after completing our study of prophecy. A few weeks later, I received Mom's unanticipated call and learned that a jealous boyfriend had stabbed my sister multiple times, resulting in her instant death and his too brief incarceration. Could it be that Sherrie had terminated a bad relationship in obedience to the Lord's leading? I may never know the answer to that question, but I am certain that Sherrie, like my father, both victims of violent crimes, were united together in heaven that last day of September in 1984. Returning to Mexico City from Sherrie's funeral, I was met with the sweetest and most caring people from the bodega. One person in particular extended her compassionate heart towards me in the loss of my sister. Maria del Pilar Moctezuma Albistegui became a special friend who showed me much tenderness in a very lonely and difficult season. God was indeed making all things beautiful in His time. The myth of coincidence. Was it a coincidence that Sherrie, at age 39, gave her life to the Lord just prior to her death? I see God's sovereign hand at work, bringing her to Him through an impromptu study of the Scriptures when she had previously been so hard-hearted towards the gospel. God's timing is impeccable. I am reminded of the story of an Italian man in the Bible named Cornelius. Like Sherrie, he wanted a Bible study in his home. Peter just happened to be in nearby Joppa, so Cornelius invited him. Cornelius was a good man. He was generous. He even feared God. Yet he had a particular need to know Jesus, the Messiah of Israel, and Peter was faithful to lead him to the Lord. Salvation came that day to Cornelius' house, and he and his family were saved. Do you have a story of personal tragedy, pain, disappointment, or heartache in which you sensed God's presence and saw Him working behind the scenes for good? Consider it and give glory to the Lord.